Greetings, everyone. Rajee Narinesingh here, transgender activist, author, and actress. So last night I was having a really dynamic conversation with transgender actress and activist Sadeja Shimmers. And we were talking about different things. And let me tell you, whenever we talk, it's like a meeting of the minds. Oh my God. I love her to death. She's just a really great person and she's brilliant. When I tell you a creative spirit, the ideas that this girl comes up with, phenomenal. So, yeah, we got a few pots on the stove brewing. I'm not going to get into that on this video, but stay tuned. Anyway, last night we were talking about a different number of topics, and she brought up the fact that she feels like whether you're a biological woman or you're a trans woman, it's the same thing. We're all women. And of course, me coming back and thinking of all that I've been through, my experiences, I said to her, I said, Sadeja, I kind of see what you're saying, but no, it's different. We trans women have a different experience than biological women. And, I started to bring up different examples. And one of the examples that I talked about was like, okay, are the high employment discrimination rate that the transgender community deals with. And I said, take a biological woman walking in for a job and a trans woman walking in for the same job. They both have equal qualifications. I said probably 9 out of 10. And okay, let's give it the benefit of the doubt. Let's say 7 to 8 out of 10 times it's going to be the biological woman that gets the job. I mean, that's just how it's been in my experience. So anyway, she was like saying, I respect, she was like listening to me and connecting with my experience. But she said to me, she said, really, with the world that we live in and all of the misogyny that goes on, if you have a dress on and you're feminine, you're dealing with the same shit. And I thought, well, yeah, I guess so on some levels, and anyway, we ended the conversation shortly after that. But then I got to thinking. I said, wow, this whole MeToo movement that's going on. And how, it started with Bill Cosby and all of that scandal. And then the floodgates opened up with Harvey Weinstein. And then it's just been a domino effect, one after the other after the other. All of these influential, powerful, rich men that have literally lost their careers overnight. And it's just something like one after the other. And you think, I guess it's been going on for so very long, and now is the time. So then it got me to think about an experience that I had. And I was like, wow, oh my God. Like, I've been through so much shit, pardon my French, but, stuff is like buried back in my memory. And like, sometimes I just like bury it so deep that I don't really think about it. But actually, it was during a time in my life where I was looking for a job. I had been out of work for a number of months. The company that I was with prior to, I had been there for years. And, well-respected employee and everything. But the company went out of business and we lost our jobs, all of us. So I'm looking for work. Now, I have some college behind me. I have a lot of work experience. But here it is. I am now, like, out. Trans and proud. Like, I'm out. There's no hiding the transgenderism because, on the physical level, I had already started transitioning. So I'm looking for work, nothing. And I mean, I'm pounding the pavement. And you could almost see the looks in people's eyes when I would walk in for an interview. And you knew, I knew I turned my back, and probably as soon as I turned my back, my resume was going into file 13, into the trash can. So I finally heard about this company, big company, and it was a huge call center. They needed a lot of bodies to, to work that center. And I thought, well, let me go there. Let me see if I can apply for something there. So I went into the recruitment office. There was of course, an application I had to fill out. There was a test I had to take, and a preliminary interview. I passed everything. I passed the test, the preliminary interview. So the secretary says to me, "Oh, we'll give you a call in about a week for a second interview." So I said, "Okay, great." So I leave really excited. I'm like, "Oh my God, this is finally happening. Like, I'm going to get a job." So a week goes by, no phone call. 2 weeks go by, no phone call. So I'm talking to my old friend, Brian. We've been friends, oh my God, since I was in 7th grade. He was in 6th grade. So we're talking years. We went to high school together. So we're on the phone and I'm like, oh my God, I haven't heard back from this company. And he's like, you need to go back down there. You passed the test, the preliminary interview. Go on back down there and ask them, like, what's going on? So I got myself together. I went back down. I walk in and the secretary is looking at me like, what are you doing here? And I explained to her, I was here 2 weeks ago. I did the preliminary interview. I passed that. I did the test, the employment test. I passed that. And you told me, this is what I tell her, that you'd be giving me a call in about a week. But it's been 2 weeks. So she says, all right, have a seat. I'll be right back. So I sit down and she comes back out and she's like, someone will see you. So she had gone to like one of the recruitment managers. So he comes out and he calls me into his office. Now, cute guy, cute Hispanic guy. So anyway, I sit down and the first thing he says to me is he looks and he says, looks at these. And he's like, are those real? So I kind of laugh it off and I'm like, yeah, they're real. I mean, I had to do a lot of work to get them, but they are real. And at the time, I wasn't even this big. I mean, we're talking like early on in my transition. So I might have been like maybe a B cup or C cup, and I was dressed appropriately. I didn't have like all the cleavage hanging out. But anyway, so I said to him, yeah, I said I had to work to get them, do some things to get them, but they're real. There's no padding here, So anyway, then he looks at me and he says, I heard you girls give really good blowjobs. So I'm like, oh my God, and I'm like, how am I going to handle this? Like, really? I mean, but we trans girls, we're pretty quick on our feet. And honey, we're survivors. So I kind of laughed it off and I said to him, I said, well, that is what a lot of people do say about us types of girls. That we are good at that. I said, but I guess it depends on the guy, and how he rates it. And I kind of laughed it off. So he starts talking about something else sexual. And then I say to him, I said, what about my job? Like me getting employed here. And then he's like, oh, yeah, you got the job. You're hired. He says, show up in about a week. He says, next Monday, as a matter of fact, because it was a Monday that I showed up. And he says, show up next Monday. There's a training class starting and you have the job. So I said, well, I hope it's not a problem, me being transgender. So he says to me, he says, no, we're an equal opportunity employer. It's not a problem. Because I was very forthcoming about, who I am and all of that. And so very open, out and trans. So anyway, I showed up to work the week later for the training class. And day one, everything went well. I was like so excited. I'm like, oh my God, this is fabulous. Like, I think this is going to really work out. Day two, I'm sitting in class and my teacher comes in and he calls me out of the class. So he says, I just want to warn you, the director of personnel wants to meet with you. I tried to tell him, you're very natural with the way you carry yourself and, but he says they want to talk to you. So I said, okay. So he takes me over to the employment area, the personnel area, I should say. And so I walk into the director's office and I sit down and he's like, we have a problem. He's like, your ID says one thing. On the computer application, you put Miss. Your ID, my driver's license at the time had M on it, male, the male gender marker. And he says on your written application, you put transgender. So I said to him, I said, well, I said, look at me. I said, on the computer, there's no box for trans. I certainly wasn't going to put Mr. I said, the ID at the time in the state of Florida, you had to actually have a court order to get your gender marker changed. Things have changed since then. They're allowing trans people to do that now. But in those days, it was very difficult to do. And then I said, but you can see I'm being forthright about who I am, forthcoming, honest about who I am, because I wrote down on my written application, transgender. So then he's like, well, I don't know if this is going to work. I really don't. You're going to be like an experiment. And believe me, you're going to be under a microscope. He says, you can't use the ladies' room because, women are going to be offended by you using the ladies' room. And you certainly can't use the men's room because of your safety and, men, you being in there with men. So he's like, I don't know what we're going to do. He says, I hope you don't have any sort of political agenda coming to our company. So I said to him, I said, sir, I just need to work like everyone else and make a living. Roof over my head, food to eat. There's no political agenda. So he says to me, he says, well, I know you have other transgender friends. Don't refer them to this company. I was like, wow, this is my welcome. Oh my goodness. And I was thinking, if I only had a tape recorder and if I was only recording this conversation, the hell with political agenda, you all would have been in court, okay? Because this is a lawsuit. It's blatant discrimination. So anyway, after the conversation last night, I started thinking about that whole experience. And then I said, oh my gosh, not so much the transgender part, once I had started on day 2 of my training, not that part, but the part where I dealt with the recruitment manager interviewing me for the second interview, that part. I said to myself, wow, whether it was me, Miss Transgender, or a biological woman, if he was acting the same way, it really was the same thing. Being inappropriate like that, saying those things to me, or if it was a biological woman going for the job, sitting in that same seat that I was sitting in. So yeah, same shit, and then I realized, wow, I can say me too, because I didn't really connect. I've been through so much. And sometimes, a lot of things are just buried, and I hadn't connected. And, that's with all of it going on now, and all these women coming out, I hadn't connected it. And I was like, wow, me too. And so, Deja girl, I see what you're saying. So, anyway, I had to share this experience with you guys. I tell you, I think that this is really a time of awakening. I think a lot of men are going to be forced to stay in check. It is a fine line. I do want to say, from the man's perspective, I know that it's a fine line because men are expected to be the pursuers, and to chase, the chasers, to pursue a woman if they're attracted to her. And so that can be a fine line because, in order to do that, you have to make your move, for lack of a better phrase. And sometimes making that move can be taken from the woman's perspective as inappropriate. So I get it. I get it. It is a fine line. But, you know, I think that a lot of these powerful men, rich men in positions of power, influential, they really thought they could do whatever the hell they wanted and get away with it. And so, it starts there. People in Hollywood and in the public eye that can really give a voice to the people that don't have a voice, like the waitress at a diner whose boss is doing the same thing to her, being inappropriate, or more than that, being really offensive sexually. Like the secretary at the company whose boss is doing that, or male co-workers doing that to her. So yeah, this is definitely a time of awakening, and I feel really blessed to be a part of it. I do, because me sharing my story, and I think more women, biological or trans, need to share their stories. And by doing that, I think that it really helps with the whole movement. Love, peace, and blessing, guys. Mwah. And girls.